Let's see then how to get the most out of our ultrasound machine through presetting. We have to do this once we're going to start using our ultrasound machine. Good handling, good calibration, and a good configuration of the parameters. In general, all machines have 4 fundamental parameters, which are frequency, gain, focus, and depth. These are the 4 that we have to learn in order to build a better quality image with this machine. So, the first fundamental parameter is frequency. On our machine, we had already shown where the command is, and it's this one. Normally, machines may have a knob where that frequency is managed by us, from one range to a certain range. But on our machine, it's already pre-configured. We pre-configure it. And by moving this knob, it will give us these 3 possibilities: penetration, general, or resolution, with the first 3 letters always appearing there on the marker. And basically, what this refers to is the frequency range with which it works. Every time we use it, by moving the button, we are going to change these frequencies to this range. Since frequency is proportionally related to depth, then on the monitor, what we're going to see is something like this, where here we change it, and we see how the D, which is the depth, changes. And on the monitor, what we're going to see when we change it then is that it changes from more hyperechoic or brighter. Look how it looks here when changing this frequency range and the parameters I showed you. It will look more hyperechoic or less hyperechoic. So the frequency, according to the depth, remember that it varies, and that was the first concept of sound that we had given. At greater depth, lower frequencies. At less depth, higher frequencies. Depth, then, let's see another example. Look here, the depth, which is in close relation with the frequency, is also managed from a knob that automatically moves this scale where the depth is numerically described. So here we go from 1.5 centimeters, here 1 centimeter, and we can increase it. Look how we're going down here to 3.5, and we can take it up to 7 centimeters, and it will mark it on the scale. So the depth, which we can manage from 1 centimeter up to 7 centimeters. That will allow us to see images more closely or deeper, as in this case where we go up to 4 centimeters. We will lose more detail in depth, but if we want to reach this area, we have to deepen our probe. Let's look at it here with a more practical example. Look, the same image at 2 centimeters of depth and at 4.5, so we'll be able to see more superficially, with higher frequencies, greater detail. An image that's much more defined, histologically richer in its characteristics, so to speak, where we'll see our contours very well. Whereas in this one, we get a more panoramic view because it's deeper. We see a broader panorama with less detail. This is the same image at 2 different depths. A similar example. Here we're at 4.5, a bit deeper, and this one is at 2. Let's see how the tibia, the patella, and the tendon look much more panoramic, while here we see the tendon in more detail. So, depth is the second configuration parameter after frequency that we must learn. Basically, this is the example. The third fundamental parameter that all machines have is gain. Look at these 2 images where we have altered the gain. And basically on the right we increase the gain, in this case marked with the letter G at 78 and here at 74. To see a median nerve in a forearm where we can evaluate the superficial and deep flexors, and in the middle of the 2, Well, the median with its characteristic honeycomb image, but at a different gain. What does this depend on? On how I also want to see my image, how I interpret it better, and how it can be easier for me. It is marked on the scale with the letter G. Here it is at 74 and here 78. Third parameter then, the gain. The gain has two ways of being handled in our ultrasound machine, which is the general gain. When I turn this knob, then I'm going to make the whole image look like in the drawing, as in the previous image, brighter or less bright. And this other one, which is the sectorial one, which basically by means of these keys I can make it brighter in the segment that I want. That is, by manipulating, as its name indicates, by sectors or segments. I can give only that piece a greater range of gain. Let's look at it here. So here we have our gain, which is at 70. Now we are going to do a handling width. We raise it to 78, 81. Look how it changes in general until we take it to 100%. A much brighter image. If I lower it, I will have a darker image. This is the gain, and by sectors, I could illuminate or make brighter only one segment of the same. Here is a new example where we are evaluating two types of gain as we have already seen. The fourth configuration parameter is the focus. Different machines have it, and basically it allows us to also emphasize and improve the image quality in a defined segment. On our ultrasound machine, there are two buttons that allow us to control it. All machines will have this little arrow that tells us where we're focused. Some machines have one or several focuses, a multi-focus, and they allow us to, well, perform a, let's say, more detailed evaluation in a segment we want. Notice that lowering the focus then adjusts all the configuration parameters. The tissue becomes brighter or more hyperechoic depending on where we place the focus. So let's look at it here. We can also concentrate on a specific area, and by changing the parameters, changing the focus changes the configuration parameters and gives us more defined images in a segment. These are the basic configuration parameters. All these parameters on the machines. There's a little ruler here that has different letters and numbers, and they will give us an interpretation of what we're working with. So let's review it a bit. Here you'll see, for example, that there's an MI, which means mechanical index, and this is a unit of measurement for the transformation of sound into heat, and this implies, well, the possibility of cavitation. Theoretically, sound. You know that there are some sound waves that are even used therapeutically to create and can cause cavitation. With sound, that possibility is really very low, but potentially, for example, a mechanical index greater than 1.0 in embryos and in gynecology could potentially have an effect, so they usually handle it in a lower range. For musculoskeletal, we can handle it much higher, and there generally won't be cavitation. That's what's defined. The second element we can evaluate on our dashboard then talks about the probe. It says we have a linear probe that ranges from 7 to 18. This is the probe we're using for this example. It gives us, if we change the probe, well, this parameter will also change. The depth is marked with the letter D, and the respective information is also here. This is the number of frames per second being formed on the machine. In this case, 34. 35 is basically what the screen shows. The scan. This basically tells us that the machine has this function that allows for the integration of all parameters. So when one is changed, The others are just to provide a much more homogeneous image. The gain, basically, as we were demonstrating, well, it's always expressed here as a percentage of gain with the letter G. The dynamic range, which basically allows us to get much softer images, more hypoechoic or also more hyperechoic, and on different machines, it lets you manage and improve the image quality. This other key tells us about the number of focuses. So we have multifocus. So this machine can do up to 4 focuses at the same time. And this last one, the numeric ruler, in this case, gives us the depth in centimeters that we're using on our machine. This is an extended view, which is another of the important parameters to manage. It allows summation of images. Each is an image being added, and the computer allows us to see the entire extension. For example, this knee shows the tibia, patellar tendon, patella completely with its characteristic acoustic shadow. This is the femur, quadriceps tendon. Here's a synovial membrane, Hoffa's fat pad tissue. What is this for? Well, for taking measurements, for getting a complete visual image, as in this case. And let's say the greatest utility might be for measuring collections. For example, in this case, here's a collection that we can measure when it doesn't fit in a single frame. We do a reconstitution through the computer of an extended view, and it gives us this value and this image quality. There are other parameters that ultrasound machines like ours have, which we will study later, such as elastography. For now, just know that they exist, and we'll look at them later. With this, we then complete this basic module. We now know how to identify and operate the machine, so we'll consider it finished.